Okay, so now what I think I want to do is actually start fleshing out the app. We're going to create an app and start adding in some models and try and get those models to show in the admin. So once again, I'm going to use my Django admin command line utility. Instead of start project this time, I'm going to do start app. Let's just call it podcasts. If we do tree again, we can see it's created a new podcast app directory alongside podcatcher here. The next thing I want to do is I think I want to initialize Git repository and then just start throwing some things in git ignore. This will be useful later. I probably want to exclude my local env and dir-env, but I don't necessarily want to check that into version control because it's not applicable to everyone. And then I think I'll just fire up an editor here and we can explore things in like a GUI. So we can see we have a podcast app directory and a podcatcher project directory. So in here everything is pretty much going to be blank because it's for defaults. I've got views, test, models, apps. So what I want to do is want to go into models and just start fleshing things out. So I want to have a podcast model here. We're just going to start by keeping it simple. We're going to have a title. We're going to try and get this to appear in the admin. And let's say return self.title. So when this is rendered in the UI, I just want to show the podcast title. And I'm going to copy paste that and just have the exact same thing for episode. And what I want to do is I want to link episodes to podcasts. So here I've got the documentation for many-to-one relationships by using foreign keys. We're just going to steal this example because they say a reporter can be associated with many articles. Article can only have one reporter. Well, it's the same for us. A podcast can have many episodes, but one episode can only have one podcast. So we're just going to copy this example. We're going to drop this into here. Why can't I paste in insert mode when I'm in Vim and Cadence? Interesting. But instead of reporter, we're just going to have podcast and podcast. Okay, that seems, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just fire open our terminal here, check we're in the right directory. See if there's any migrations to be made. That's interesting, I've not actually installed Django. Why does it think Django is not installed? I think it's just a bit confused about my my virtual environment here. Let's try this again. Make migrations. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so it's saying there's no changes detected, and this is most likely because I've forgotten to actually tell Django about this new application. So if we look in here, there is an apps declaration which points to my config here. We do manage. In fact, we can just do Python. What I want to do is actually import this from within the Django settings, so I can say from podcasts.apps import podcasts config. I basically need to do this from within inside here in installed apps. So I want to type the path to this file, so podcasts.apps podcasts config and save that. And then maybe if I do make migrations, yeah, okay, so it's automatically detected that there are some changes in my podcast app. If we refresh this now, we should see inside podcasts migrations. Yeah, here's the initial migration. So what it's going to do, it's going to create a podcast model and an episode model, title foreign key. Okay, so here the ID is going to default to an integer field. I actually don't want that. I would like these to be UUIDs. So how can we do that? Let's say primary key. Show me the official documentation, please. Let's just say Django primary key model field reference. Surely in here there will be a UUID example. Okay, this is what I wanted. So we are going to, instead of having an integer integer ID, we're going to have the UUID. So we're going to just paste that in. I'm going to paste that. I think I will need to import UUID. And I actually do want to get rid of that default migration that it made initially. And then we can do make migrations again. This will probably be reloaded. Yep, you can see now this is a UUID field. So that's made the migration. Let's try and apply that migration. Now if we run SQLite re, we can probably see that these new tables, I can spell tables, has been created. Yeah, there's podcast episode and podcast. Let's look at the schema for podcast. Podcast episode. Okay, yeah, we've got the bar chart, podcast ID, cool. It looks like SQLite doesn't have an actual UUID primary key, which is fine, because SQLite just does everything with strings. Okay, and then there's the foreign key. Nice. Another thing we can do is actually hop into here, and maybe we'll need to refresh this. I'm not sure how we reload the database. Maybe just Control R. Okay, yeah, Control R did the trick. We have episodes here, and we have podcasts. Okay, that's cool. So let me head back into here. Let's now try and run the server. Port's already in use. Okay, so it's still running over here. We go into here. Let's go back to our admin. The next thing I want to do is have those two models display in the admin here. So we're going to go back into here. Going to go into admin. You can see this is pretty blank. So let's say class episode admin. Admin dot, is it model admin? Yeah, let's see if this works. And I know I need to do admin dot register episode. Say from models import episode podcast. If I can spell podcast correctly, and then let's do the same thing here, but for podcast. Hopefully that will automatically refresh. Okay, so we can have podcasts and episodes. Let's try adding a podcast here. Let's just say test, and in here episodes, let's add a podcast. Let's just call it podcast A and link it to test. Okay, that seems to have worked great. Another thing I'd like to do, I think, is show all the episodes related to the podcasts in here. So I think I can do something like class episode inline, and say admin.tabular inline, and say the model is the episode, and here I can say the inlines is going to be the episode inline. So if I go back here and I refresh this and click on test, so now I can add and remove all the podcasts associated, all the episodes associated with a given podcast. Okay, that seems like a decent point to close this video off, and in the next video I think I will explore something new.